The glow of the laptop screen illuminated my face, the words blurring into a sea of pixels as I typed the final sentence. A sigh of satisfaction, a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration escaped my lips. The end. It was done. The Shadowborn Chronicles. My magnum opus, my online baby, the story that had consumed my every waking thought for the past 2 years, was complete. I hit post, the digital equivalent of sending a message in a bottle out into the vast ocean of the internet, a tiny spark of hope flickering in my chest. Maybe a few dozen people would read it, maybe 100, if I was lucky. Maybe, just maybe, someone, somewhere, would connect with the world I had created, the characters I had breathed life into, the story that had poured out of me like a river breaking its banks. What I hadn't anticipated was the tsunami. Within days, the Shadowborn Chronicles went viral. The views skyrocketed, the comments flooded in, the fan art exploded across social media like a glitter bomb in a unicorn factory. People were obsessed. They dissected every chapter, debated every plot twist, created fan theories that were wilder than my own imagination. They even started a petition demanding that I publish the damn thing, their enthusiasm a whirlwind of adoration that both thrilled and terrified me. "Ava," my mom would say, her voice dripping with a disdain that could curdle milk, "when are you going to get a real job? All this internet nonsense is not a career." "But Mom," I'd protest, the excitement bubbling within me, battling with the familiar sting of her disapproval. "People love it. Millions of people are reading my story. Publishers are contacting me. This could be a waste of your talent," she'd interrupt, her eyes narrowed with a judgment that could wither a sunflower. "Look at your sister Ava. She's studying law. She's going to have a real career, a real future. You're just writing stories. Stories." The word, delivered with her signature blend of condescension and disappointment, always managed to deflate my sails, to make me question the value of my passion, the worth of my dreams. My parents, bless their practical hearts, had always prioritized my sister's conventional aspirations, her pursuit of a career that promised stability and social status, while my own creative endeavors were dismissed as frivolous, a hobby, a childish indulgence that would never amount to anything real. But the online world, that vast and unpredictable landscape of digital connections, had become my reality. The fans, with their enthusiasm, their encouragement, their unwavering belief in my talent, were my community, my support system, the fuel that kept the fire of my creativity burning. And as I scrolled through the comments, the fan art, the heartfelt messages from readers who had found solace, inspiration, and even a sense of belonging in the world I had created, a quiet defiance began to stir within me. My parents might not understand, might not appreciate the value of my stories, but that didn't diminish their worth, their power, their ability to connect with people on a level that transcended the limitations of their narrow worldview. I was a storyteller, and whether they acknowledged it or not, whether they supported it or not, I would continue to write, to create, to share the stories that burned within me, the stories that had found a home in the hearts of millions, the stories that were, in their own way, changing the world, one reader at a time. The manila envelope, addressed to my parents in an official-looking font, was the harbinger of doom. I found it on the kitchen counter, its presence an unwelcome intrusion on my usual post-work ritual of instant noodles and rereading my favorite chapters of the Shadowborn Chronicles. Curiosity, that pesky feline, got the better of me. I shouldn't have opened it, but I did. The contract, its pages filled with legalese that swam before my eyes, was a slap in the face, a punch to the gut, a betrayal that tasted like bile in the back of my throat. My parents, those champions of practicality, those guardians of conventional wisdom, had sold my story, the one I had poured my heart and soul into, the one that had resonated with millions, the one they had dismissed as internet nonsense. They had sold it, without my consent, without my knowledge, without a shred of consideration for the dreams I had woven, the world I had created, the characters that were as real to me as my own reflection. The rage was a living thing, a fiery beast that clawed its way up my throat, its roar echoing through the once peaceful confines of our suburban home. I stormed into the living room, the contract clutched in my hand, my voice a weaponized tremor that shattered the illusion of familial harmony. "What the hell is this?" I demanded, the words a guttural expulsion of betrayal and disbelief. My parents, bless their oblivious hearts, looked up from their respective distractions. My father from his newspaper, my mother from her never-ending quest to conquer Candy Crush. Their faces a mask of confused innocence that only fueled my fury. "Ava, dear," my mother began, her voice dripping with a condescending sweetness that made my teeth grind like tectonic plates in a slow-motion earthquake. "What's all the fuss about?" "This?" I shouted, thrusting the contract in their faces, the paper trembling with the force of my anger. "You sold my book, my story, without my permission." "Now, Ava," my father interjected, his voice a calm counterpoint to my rage, a tone that had always infuriated me with its patronizing implication that I was overreacting, that my emotions were somehow invalid. "We did what we thought was best." "Best?" I scoffed, the word a bitter explosion of disbelief. "Best for whom? Certainly not for me. For my sister, I suppose? For the new car she's been whining about for months?" The truth, ugly and undeniable, hung in the air like a toxic cloud. They had sold my dream, my passion, my creation to fund my sister's materialistic desires, to appease her insatiable hunger for the shiny and the new. And I, the daughter who dared to dream beyond the confines of their conventional expectations, was once again relegated to the role of the afterthought, the invisible child whose aspirations were deemed less worthy, less valuable, less real. "We just wanted to help her, Ava," my mother pleaded, her voice cracking with a guilt that was as fleeting as it was unconvincing. "She's going to college soon. She needs a reliable car." "And what about me?" I demanded, my voice raw with the pain of their betrayal. "What about my dreams? My future? The years I poured into that story, the sacrifices I made, the passion I invested?" "It's just a story, Ava," my father dismissed, his words a dagger twisting in my gut. "A silly little hobby. You'll get over it." Get over it? Get over the theft of my creation, the erasure of my identity as an author, the blatant disregard for my dreams, my aspirations, my very worth as a human being? The anger within me hardened, the betrayal solidifying into a cold, hard resolve. "No," I said, my voice a quiet declaration of war, a defiance that surprised even myself. "I won't get over it. I won't forgive this. And I won't let you steal from me again." I turned and walked out, the slam of the door echoing through the house like a gunshot, a final punctuation mark on the sentence of our fractured family. They had sold my dream, but they hadn't extinguished my fire. They had betrayed my trust, but they hadn't broken my spirit. They had underestimated me, but they wouldn't get away with it. I was leaving the house that had become a prison, the family that had become my jailers, the life that had become a cage for my dreams. I was walking away from the stolen story, the forged signature, the bitter taste of betrayal. And I was walking towards a future where my voice would be heard, my talent recognized, my name not theirs, emblazoned on the cover of a bestseller that would make them regret the day they ever doubted me. The contract mocked me from the kitchen table, its crisp pages a testament to their betrayal, the legalese a foreign language that spelled out my doom in stark black and white. I traced the forged signature, my name a grotesque imitation of my own handwriting, a symbol of their audacity, their utter disregard for my rights, my dreams, my very identity as an author. "They can't do this," I muttered, my voice a raw whisper in the silent house, the anger a knot in my stomach, a fire burning in my veins. "They can't just steal my story, my creation, and sell it off like a used car." But they had. And the contract, with its meticulously worded clauses and ironclad legalities, was a stark reminder of my powerlessness. I had poured my heart and soul into the Shadowborn Chronicles, nurtured it from a seed of an idea to a sprawling online epic that had captivated millions. And now, it was gone, snatched away by the very people who were supposed to protect me, to support me, to cherish my dreams as their own. The injustice of it all was a bitter pill to swallow, a choking rage that threatened to consume me. I had been erased, my name replaced by a corporate pseudonym, my creation stripped of its soul, its essence, its connection to the woman who had breathed life into its characters, its world, its very existence. There has to be something I can do, I said, my voice gaining strength, the defiance a flicker of hope in the darkness of my despair. I can't just let them get away with this. The lawyer, a man whose sharp suit and sharper eyes were as intimidating as his reputation for legal ruthlessness, listened patiently as I poured out my story. The betrayal, the anger, the desperate plea for justice. But his response, when it came, was a cold shower of reality, a bucket of ice water thrown over my burning rage. "I'm sorry, Miss Davis," he said, his voice devoid of emotion, the legal jargon, a death knell to my hopes. "The contract, while morally reprehensible, is legally sound. Your parents, as your legal guardians, had the authority to sign on your behalf, and the publishing company, having acted in good faith, is now the rightful owner of your work." "But it's my story," I protested, my voice cracking with the injustice of it all. "I wrote it. I created it. It's mine." "Legally, it's not," he countered, his words a hammer blow to my already shattered dreams. "The copyright, the intellectual property rights, the royalties, they all belong to the publisher now. You have no claim to the work, no right to your own creation." The despair was a suffocating weight, a crushing realization of the powerlessness that had been my constant companion in this family, this life, this world where my dreams were always secondary to the expectations of others, the ambitions of those who held the reins of control. "But what about the fans?" I asked, a desperate plea for a loophole, a miracle, a way out of this legal labyrinth. "They know it's my story. They can testify. They can—" "The fans have no legal standing in this matter, Miss Davis," the lawyer interrupted, his voice a gentle but firm dismissal of my last shred of hope. "Their opinions, their support, their admiration, it means nothing in the eyes of the law. The contract is the contract, and the contract is clear." I left the lawyer's office, the city lights blurring through my tears, the weight of my loss a physical ache in my chest. I had been robbed, not just of my story, but of my identity, my voice, my future. My parents, the people who were supposed to protect me, to nurture my dreams, had instead sold them off to the highest bidder. Their betrayal a testament to their own twisted values, their warped priorities, their inability to see me, their own daughter, as anything more than a means to an end. The anger within me hardened, the injustice fueling a resolve that was as cold and sharp as the winter wind that whipped through the streets. I would not be silenced. I would not be erased. I would not let them get away with this. The contract might be legally sound, but it was morally bankrupt. And I, Ava Davis, the girl who had poured her heart and soul into a story that had touched millions, would find a way to reclaim my voice, my creation, my rightful place in the world. The journey ahead would be long, the battle uphill, the odds stacked against me. But I would fight, I would write, and I would win. For I was not just a writer. I was a warrior, a survivor, a woman determined to rewrite the ending of a story that had been stolen from me. The suitcase felt heavy in my hands, not just with clothes and toiletries, but with the weight of 1,000 unspoken words, a lifetime of suppressed emotions, a future that was about to be rewritten. I stood in the doorway of my childhood bedroom, the familiar posters and faded photographs, a mocking reminder of the life I was leaving behind. My parents, bless their oblivious hearts, were downstairs, their voices a distant murmur in the symphony of my own internal chaos. They probably thought I was sulking, throwing a teenage tantrum, the usual dramatic flair of a writer whose feelings were always a bit too intense, a bit too inconvenient for their practical sensibilities. But this wasn't a tantrum. This was an exodus, a silent rebellion against the stifling atmosphere of their expectations, their betrayals, their inability to see me, their own daughter, as anything more than a pawn in their game of conventional aspirations and materialistic pursuits. I glanced at the bookshelf, my gaze lingering on the worn copies of my favorite novels, the stories that had fueled my own imagination, the worlds that had offered me an escape from the stifling reality of my own life. They were my companions, my confidants, the silent witnesses to the dreams I had nurtured, the stories I had longed to tell. And now, I was taking them with me, along with the laptop that held the digital remnants of my stolen creation. The words that had resonated with millions, the world that had been ripped from my grasp. They were my weapons now, my tools of defiance, the foundation upon which I would build a new life, a new identity, a new future where my voice would be heard, my talent recognized, my dreams realized. A soft knock on the door interrupted my reverie. My sister Sarah stood in the doorway, her eyes filled with a mixture of confusion and concern. "Ava," she began, her voice hesitant, "what are you doing?" "Leaving," I said simply, the word of finality that echoed the resolve in my heart. "Leaving?" she echoed, her brow furrowed with disbelief. "But where are you going?" "Away," I replied, my gaze meeting hers with a determination that surprised even myself. "Away from here, from this house, from the people who have stolen my dreams and tried to erase my future." "But Ava," she protested, her voice laced with a pleading that tugged at the edges of my anger. "Mom and Dad, they didn't mean to." "Didn't mean to?" I scoffed, the words a bitter reminder of their betrayal. "They forged my signature, Sarah. They sold my story. They used my creation to buy you a car. And you're telling me they didn't mean to? They just wanted to help me," she whispered, her eyes downcast, the guilt evident in her voice. "And what about me?" I demanded, my voice rising with the frustration that had been simmering for years. "What about my dreams, my aspirations, my right to a future that isn't dictated by their expectations, their limitations, their inability to see me as anything more than a means to an end?" Sarah's silence was a damning indictment of their complicity, her guilt a reflection of the stolen opportunities, the unfulfilled potential, the life that had been denied to me. "I'm sorry, Ava," she finally said, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm so sorry." "Sorry isn't enough, Sarah," I said, my voice softening with a touch of sadness that was as much for her as for myself. "I loved you. I trusted you. But you chose their side. You chose the car, the comfort, the easy path. And in doing so, you lost me." I turned and walked away, the suitcase bumping against my leg, a reminder of the journey ahead, the unknown path that stretched before me, the future I was determined to create. As I stepped out of the house, the door closing behind me with a finality that echoed the severing of ties, a wave of emotions washed over me. Sadness, yes, for the family I was leaving behind, the love that had been tarnished by betrayal. Anger, certainly, at the injustice, the theft of my dreams, the erasure of my identity, but also a newfound sense of liberation, a thrilling anticipation of the possibilities that awaited me, the freedom to forge my own path, to write my own story, to become the woman I was meant to be. The Greyhound bus station, a delightful blend of diesel fumes and existential despair, was my grand entrance into the glamorous world of anonymity. I stepped off the bus, my suitcase, a battered relic from my previous life, banging against my shins like a disgruntled toddler demanding a juice box. The city, a sprawling concrete jungle teeming with questionable characters and overpriced coffee shops, welcomed me with open arms, or maybe that was just the lingering scent of urine and unfulfilled dreams. "Apartment for rent," the sign proclaimed, its faded paint a testament to the landlord's commitment to low-budget aesthetics. The building, a charming blend of crumbling brickwork and questionable plumbing, promised a truly authentic urban living experience. "It's a shithole," the landlord, a man whose blood alcohol content was probably higher than his IQ, informed me with a cheerful grin that revealed a missing incisor and a disturbing lack of dental hygiene. "But it's your shithole! And hey, at least the cockroaches pay rent on time." "Sold," I declared, my voice dripping with a sarcasm that was as much a defense mechanism as it was a genuine appreciation for the landlord's unique approach to real estate marketing. This wasn't exactly the sprawling penthouse suite I'd envisioned for my triumphant return to the literary world, but it was a far cry from the suffocating confines of my childhood bedroom, where my dreams had been stifled and my creativity auctioned off to the highest bidder. The job hunt was a humbling experience, a crash course in the art of swallowing your pride and accepting that a degree in creative writing doesn't exactly qualify you for a career in brain surgery. Waitress, barista, dog walker. The titles on my hastily updated resume were a symphony of underemployment, a testament to the fact that the real world didn't give a damn about my online fame or my stolen bestseller. "You're hired, sweetheart." The diner owner, a woman whose personality was as greasy as her spoon collection, announced, her voice a gravelly rasp that could strip paint off a battleship. But don't expect any special treatment just because you can string a few sentences together. In this joint, coffee is king, and customers are always right, even when they're wronger than a flat earther's map. "Got it," I said, my voice a carefully neutral blend of compliance and a silent vow to spike her coffee with enough sugar to send her into a diabetic coma. This wasn't exactly the glamorous world of literary salons and book signings I'd fantasized about, but it was a paycheck, a means to an end, a temporary detour on the road to reclaiming my stolen glory. The nights were a symphony of urban cacophony, sirens wailing, car horns blaring, drunken arguments echoing through the paper-thin walls. The silence of my tiny apartment, punctuated by the occasional scuttling of unseen creatures, hopefully just cockroaches, and not the mutated rat monsters my imagination conjured up, was a breeding ground for self-doubt, a fertile field for the seeds of regret to take root. But then I'd open my laptop, the glow of the screen a beacon in the darkness, the words flowing from my fingertips like a defiant torrent, the story taking shape, the characters whispering their secrets, the world I was creating a testament to my resilience, my refusal to be silenced, my unwavering determination to rewrite the ending that had been stolen from me. AK Thorne. The name rolled off my tongue, a delicious blend of mystery and badassery, like a gothic heroine who'd just kicked the villain's ass and stolen his vintage wine collection. Forget Ava Davis, the girl who'd been betrayed, the writer who'd been robbed blind by her own flesh and blood. AK Thorne was my phoenix, rising from the ashes, a literary ninja warrior armed with a laptop and a vocabulary that could make a sailor blush. This wasn't just about a pen name, it was about a goddamn rebirth, a chance to reclaim my voice, my power, my right to tell stories without fear of those stories ending up as a bargain bin special at the local bookstore, courtesy of my dear old mom and dad. The words poured onto the page, a torrent of emotions unleashed. A symphony of defiance orchestrated by a caffeine-fueled muse with a penchant for dark humor and a vocabulary that would make a sailor blush. This wasn't just a story. It was a literary exorcism, a middle finger to the past, a battle cry for a future where my creativity wouldn't be traded for a set of new tires and a weekend trip to Disneyland. This new world, this kingdom of thorns, was a twisted reflection of the reality I'd been forced to confront. Forget the whimsical fairies and noble knights of my previous work. This was a world where heroes were morally ambiguous, villains were tragically sexy, and the line between good and evil was as blurred as my vision after a triple-shot espresso and a sleepless night fueled by revenge fantasies and cheap wine. But hey, who said darkness couldn't be fun? I reveled in the gritty details, the morally gray characters, the plot twists that would leave readers gasping for air and questioning their own sanity. This was my therapy, my catharsis, my way of channeling the rage and hurt into something beautiful, something powerful, something that would make those publishing executives drool with anticipation and offer me a contract that would make my parents choke on their own envy. And as I wrote, the hours blurring into a haze of caffeine and creative frenzy, a strange sense of calm settled over me. The anxieties, the doubts, the fear that I'd never be able to recapture the magic of my stolen story. It all faded, replaced by a quiet confidence, a deep-seated knowing that this story, this world, these characters were mine. Mine alone. No parental interference, no contractual obligations, no expectations to suffocate my creativity like a plastic bag over a particularly verbose parrot. Just me, Alaska. Thorne, the writer reborn, the storyteller unleashed, the voice that would no longer be silenced. This wasn't just a novel, it was a revolution. A one-woman crusade against the forces of mediocrity, a literary Molotov cocktail thrown at the feet of the publishing establishment, a defiant roar that echoed through the digital wilderness. I'm back, bitches, and this time, I'm playing by my own rules. The phone call came as I was elbow-deep in a particularly stubborn batch of cookie dough, the sweet aroma a stark contrast to the bitter satisfaction that was bubbling in my chest. AK Thorne, the voice on the other end chirped, a symphony of barely contained excitement that would make a caffeinated squirrel sound like a Zen master. You're a goddamn phenomenon. It was my editor, Emily, a woman whose passion for literature was matched only by her impressive collection of vintage hats and her uncanny ability to find typos in a manuscript faster than a teenager can find the skip ad button on YouTube. A phenomenon? I echoed, feigning surprise, though the grin spreading across my face was probably as wide as the Nile. I thought I was just a writer with a penchant for dark humor and a caffeine addiction that could fuel a small city. Darling, Emily trilled, her voice a giddy crescendo, you're a literary rock star. Kingdom of Thorns is flying off the shelves faster than a politician's promises during an election year. We're talking New York Times bestseller, movie deals, translation rights, the whole shebang. I leaned against the counter, the dough momentarily forgotten, the victory sweeter than any cookie I could bake. This wasn't just success, it was a vindication, a middle finger to the doubters, the naysayers, the family who had tried to silence my voice, steal my dreams, and turn my creativity into a bargaining chip for a goddamn minivan. Movie deals, huh? I mused, picturing my characters brought to life on the big screen, their witty banter and morally ambiguous escapades captivating audiences worldwide. Who do you think they'll cast as the brooding anti-hero with a tragic past and a penchant for eyeliner? Darling, the casting calls haven't even started yet, Emily chuckled, her amusement evident in her voice. But trust me, Hollywood is already salivating. They're calling you the next J.K. Rowling, the voice of a generation, the literary messiah who's going to save us all from the tyranny of boring books. Messiah is a bit much, don't you think? I quipped, though the idea of having my own action figure wasn't entirely unappealing. I'm just a girl with a laptop, a caffeine addiction, and a healthy dose of cynicism. Cynicism sells, darling, Emily assured me, especially when it's wrapped in a package as brilliant as Kingdom of Thorns. You've tapped into something, Alaska. Thorne, something dark, something edgy, something that resonates with the jaded souls of our modern world. And as I hung up the phone, the dough now a sticky mess on my fingers, a wave of satisfaction washed over me, a bittersweet cocktail of triumph and a lingering resentment for the family who had tried to clip my wings, to silence my voice, to steal the very essence of who I was. They had underestimated me. They had underestimated the power of a dream deferred, the resilience of a spirit ignited, the unwavering determination of a woman who refused to be silenced. I had risen from the ashes of their betrayal, a phoenix forged in the fires of my own creative fury. And now, the world was taking notice. AK Thorne, the name, the myth, the legend, was here to stay. And somewhere in a quiet suburban home, two people who had once dismissed my passion as nonsense were probably choking on their own regret, the bitter taste of their betrayal a fitting reward for their short-sightedness. The bills piled up on the kitchen counter, a colorful mosaic of overdue notices and final warnings that clashed with the floral wallpaper and the carefully curated image of suburban respectability. My parents, bless their penny-pinching hearts, had never been particularly adept at financial planning, but the windfall from selling my stolen story, a sum that had seemed like a king's ransom at the time, had fueled a spending spree that would make a drunken sailor blush. A new car for my sister, a much-needed kitchen renovation, a disastrous investment in a timeshare that promised luxury vacations, but delivered only a lifetime supply of regret and telemarketing calls. It was a symphony of financial ineptitude, a masterclass in how to squander a golden opportunity. We're barely making ends meet, Frank, my mother lamented, her voice a symphony of despair that clashed with the chirpy morning show playing on the kitchen radio. The mortgage is overdue. The credit card bills are piling up. And I swear, if I get another call from that timeshare company, I'm going to shove a pineapple up their... Now, Martha, my father chided, his voice a weary sigh that reflected the weight of their dwindling bank account. There's no need for such language. We'll figure it out. We always do. But the figuring it out usually involved dipping into my college fund, a safety net I had naively assumed was reserved for my future, not their financial incompetence. And now, with my escape and their dwindling resources, the reality of their situation was hitting them with the force of a runaway shopping cart in a Walmart parking lot. We should have asked for more, my mother grumbled, her regret a bitter aftertaste to the champagne they had popped when they signed away my rights. That publishing company, they're making a fortune off Ava's book. And we got, what, a used car and a lifetime supply of heartburn? It's too late now, Martha, my father sighed, his voice heavy with a belated realization of the golden goose they had slaughtered. Ava's gone. The book is theirs, and we're left with this? This was a crumbling house, a mountain of debt, and a growing resentment towards the daughter they had betrayed, the daughter whose talent they had dismissed, the daughter whose success they had stolen. The irony wasn't lost on them. They had tried to control my future, to steer me towards a path they deemed practical, responsible, safe, and in doing so, they had inadvertently launched me into a trajectory that was far beyond their comprehension, a world where creativity, passion, and a healthy dose of defiance were the currencies of success. Meanwhile, my sister, Sarah, the beneficiary of their ill-gotten gains, was facing her own personal apocalypse. The shiny new car had lost its luster. The college dreams had fizzled out, and her once bright future was now a wasteland of dead-end jobs and failed relationships. I hate my life, she'd whine to my mother, her voice a petulant echo of the entitlement that had always been her defining characteristic. I'm stuck in this dead-end town, working at a job I hate, dating guys who are more interested in my Instagram followers than my actual personality. It's not fair. Life isn't fair, Sarah, my mother would retort, her voice laced with a bitterness that was as much directed at herself as at her daughter. You have to make the best of it. It could have been worse. Look at Ava. She's probably out there waitressing in a washed-up diner. The bookstore, with its hushed aisles and the comforting scent of old paper and overpriced coffee, was Sarah's usual refuge from the soul-crushing monotony of her life. She browsed the shelves, her gaze skimming over the endless rows of titles, searching for a distraction, an escape, a temporary reprieve from the reality that was closing in on her like a pair of discount shoes in a clearance sale. Then she saw it. The cover was striking. A dark, brooding landscape that hinted at the secrets hidden within its pages. The title, Kingdom of Thorns, was intriguing, a promise of adventure and intrigue that tugged at her curiosity. And the author's name? Alaska. Thorne was unfamiliar, a mysterious pseudonym that sparked a flicker of interest in her jaded literary soul. Intrigued, she picked up the book, its weight surprisingly substantial, its pages crisp and inviting. She flipped it over, her eyes scanning the blurb, the accolades, the glowing reviews that proclaimed it a masterpiece, a literary sensation, the book that everyone was talking about. She mused, a flicker of recognition stirring in the back of her mind. This sounds familiar. She settled into a plush armchair, the bookstore's quiet hum a soothing backdrop to the unfolding drama in her hands. As she turned the pages, the story unfolded, its world drawing her in, its characters captivating her with their complexity, their flaws, their undeniable humanity. The writing was exquisite, the words flowing effortlessly, the descriptions painting vivid pictures in her mind, the dialogue crackling with wit, and a dark humor that resonated with her own cynical soul. But it was more than just the writing. It was the story itself, the themes, the motifs, the underlying message of resilience and defiance that struck a chord deep within her. This wasn't just a fantasy novel, it was a mirror, reflecting the struggles, the betrayals, the disappointments that had shaped her own life. The characters, though fantastical, were also deeply human, their flaws and vulnerabilities a testament to the messy reality of existence. And as she read, a growing sense of recognition washed over her, a chilling realization that the story she was immersed in was not just familiar, it was hers, or rather, it was Ava's. The themes of betrayal, of stolen dreams, of a family that had prioritized material possessions over their own daughter's happiness. It was all there, woven into the fabric of the narrative, a haunting echo of the life they had shared, the choices they had made, the consequences they were now facing. She reached the author's bio, her heart pounding with a mix of dread and anticipation. And there she was, staring back at her from the page, her eyes a mirror to her own, her smile a haunting reminder of the sister she had betrayed, the sister who had become a literary sensation without them. Ava, the name, once a symbol of naive ambition and misplaced dreams, now stood for success, defiance, and a creative power that she had never possessed. The realization hit her like a tidal wave, washing away the layers of denial, the carefully constructed justifications, the self-pity that had been her constant companions. She had been wrong. Wrong to dismiss Ava's dreams, wrong to prioritize her own desires, wrong to allow her parents to manipulate her, to use her as a pawn in their game of control and betrayal. And now she was paying the price, her life a stark contrast to the success Ava had achieved, the happiness she had found, the future she had created for herself, without her, without them, without the family that had tried to hold her back, to silence her voice, to steal her dreams. The shame was a bitter pill to swallow, the regret a heavy weight on her shoulders. But beneath the self-recrimination, a flicker of admiration ignited, a grudging respect for the sister she had underestimated, the writer who had defied the odds, the woman who had risen from the ashes of their shared past to become a force to be reckoned with. Ava, AK Thorne, the name on the cover, the name that was now synonymous with success, with talent, with a creative power that had transcended the limitations of their family, their upbringing, their world. And as she closed the book, the final page a mirror to her own shattered dreams, she knew that she had not only lost a sister, she had lost a part of herself, a part that she could never reclaim, a part that would forever haunt her with the ghost of what could have been, the sisterhood they could have shared, the dreams they could have chased together. The living room, once a sanctuary of denial and carefully constructed illusions, was now a battleground. Sarah, her face pale with a newfound understanding, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and regret, stood before her parents, the book clutched in her hand like a weapon. "You lied to me," she accused, her voice cracking with the weight of their betrayal. "You lied to Ava. You lied to yourselves." Her parents, their faces etched with a confusion that was quickly morphing into a dawning horror, exchanged nervous glances, their usual defenses crumbling under the weight of their daughter's accusation. "Sarah, dear," her mother began, her voice a placating murmur that was as ineffective as a Band-Aid on a gaping wound. "We don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me," Sarah shouted, her voice raw with the pain of their deception. "I know about Ava. I know about her book. I know about AK Thorne." The name, once a source of amusement, a symbol of their daughter's silly little hobby, now hung in the air like a thunderclap, its echoes shattering the fragile remnants of their self-deception. "AK Thorne," her father echoed, his voice a bewildered whisper. "But that's the best-selling author, the one who wrote Kingdom of Thorns," Sarah finished, her voice laced with a bitter irony. "The one who's a literary sensation, the one whose book is being turned into a movie, the one who's making millions while we're struggling to pay the mortgage." The realization hit them like a physical blow. The truth of their actions, the consequences of their betrayal, the daughter they had underestimated, the success they had stolen, it all came crashing down on them, a tidal wave of regret and shame that threatened to drown them in its unforgiving depths. "But how?" her mother stammered, her voice a pathetic whimper. We didn't know." "Of course you didn't know," Sarah spat, her anger fueled by years of suppressed resentment, her own complicity in their scheme a heavy weight on her conscience. "You were too busy dismissing her dreams, belittling her talent, prioritizing my needs over hers. You were so blinded by your own narrow vision of the world that you couldn't see the extraordinary woman she was becoming, the writer she was meant to be." Her father, his face pale and drawn, sank into his armchair, the weight of his guilt a physical burden on his shoulders. He had failed her, his own daughter, the one he had sworn to protect, to nurture, to guide towards a fulfilling future. And now, he was paying the price. The success he had stolen from her, mocking him with its brilliance. The daughter he had cast aside, shining brighter than ever before. "We made a mistake, Sarah," he confessed, his voice a broken whisper. "A terrible mistake." "A mistake?" Sarah echoed, her voice laced with a scorn that was as much directed at herself as at her parents. You didn't just make a mistake, Dad. You betrayed her. You stole her dreams. You erased her future. And now you're left with nothing but the bitter taste of regret and the knowledge that you've lost her forever. Her words hung in the air, a damning indictment of their actions, a chilling prophecy of the lonely future that awaited them. They had gambled on their own limited vision of the world, and they had lost, spectacularly. The daughter they had underestimated, the writer they had dismissed, had risen above their betrayal, her success a testament to her resilience, her talent, her unwavering determination to forge her own path. And as Sarah stormed out of the house, the slam of the door echoing their shattered dreams, her parents were left to face the consequences of their actions. The bitter reality of a life where the daughter they had cast aside was now a shining star in a world they could no longer reach. A world where their apologies, their regrets, their belated recognition of her worth were nothing but empty whispers in the wind. The phone's insistent buzzing was a mosquito at a nudist colony, annoying, persistent, and impossible to ignore completely. I glanced at the screen, the name flashing across it like a neon sign in a red light district. Mom. A wave of nausea, a familiar cocktail of guilt, anger, and a deep-seated weariness washed over me. They were at it again, those masters of emotional manipulation, those champions of belated apologies and self-serving remorse. Ava, darling. Her voice, when I finally caved and answered, was a symphony of manufactured distress, a performance worthy of an Oscar. We're so sorry. We made a terrible mistake. Can you ever forgive us? Forgive them? Forgive the theft of my dreams, the erasure of my identity, the years of belittling my passion, dismissing my talent, prioritizing my sister's mediocrity over my own ambition. The words caught in my throat, a bitter laugh threatening to erupt like a dormant volcano. We just wanted what was best for you, sweetheart, my father chimed in, his voice a gruff echo of the paternal authority that had always suffocated my spirit. We didn't understand. We didn't realize that their daughter was a goddamn literary genius, didn't understand that their actions had consequences, that their betrayal had shattered not just my trust, but the very foundation of our family. The irony was as thick as the fog of their self-deception. The emails followed, their inboxes overflowing with digital tears, promises of redemption, pleas for a second chance. And then the letters, handwritten in a shaky script that reeked of desperation. Their words a symphony of regret, a belated recognition of the daughter they had lost, the success they had squandered. But their apologies were laced with a thinly veiled self-interest, a desperate attempt to reclaim a piece of the pie they had so carelessly thrown away. They weren't sorry for what they had done. They were sorry for the consequences, the missed opportunities, the financial windfall that had slipped through their grasping fingers. I remained silent, my response a deliberate act of defiance, a refusal to be drawn back into the toxic web of their family dynamics. I had escaped their suffocating embrace, built a new life, a new identity, a new world where my voice was not only heard but celebrated, and I wasn't about to jeopardize that, to sacrifice my hard-won freedom for the sake of a reconciliation that would only serve to reopen old wounds, rekindle old resentments, and reignite the flames of a dysfunctional family dynamic that had almost consumed me. My focus was on my work, my writing, the stories that poured out of me like a river breaking its banks, the characters that whispered their secrets in my ear, the worlds that unfolded before my eyes like a tapestry woven with the threads of my own imagination. My success was my shield, my armor, my weapon against the lingering pain of their betrayal, the echoes of their disapproval, the whispers of doubt that still occasionally haunted the corners of my mind. The interviewer, a young woman with eyes as sharp as her stilettos and a voice that could charm a confession out of a stone, leaned forward, her microphone poised like a weapon. AK Thorne, she began, her tone a blend of admiration and probing curiosity. Your story is an inspiration, a testament to the power of perseverance, the triumph of talent over adversity, but it's also shrouded in mystery. Who is the woman behind the mask? What fueled this meteoric rise to fame? I smiled, a carefully crafted expression that concealed the years of struggle, the bitterness of betrayal, the scars that had shaped me into the woman I was today. The woman behind the mask, I said, my voice a carefully modulated blend of confidence and vulnerability, is just a girl who dared to dream. A girl who refused to be silenced, a girl who learned that the greatest stories are often born from the ashes of our own personal struggles. Struggles? The interviewer echoed, her eyes widening with a practiced empathy that was as effective as it was insincere. Can you elaborate? Every writer draws inspiration from their own experiences, I said, my gaze fixed on the camera, my words a carefully crafted message to the audience, and to the two people who were undoubtedly watching, their faces a mixture of envy and regret. And my experiences, well, they haven't always been idyllic. I've faced rejection, betrayal, the kind of heartbreak that could make a cynic out of a Disney princess. Betrayal? The interviewer pounced, her journalistic instincts sharper than a shark's teeth. Can you tell us more about that? I hesitated, the temptation to name names, to expose the truth in all its gory detail, battling with the strategic awareness that sometimes the most powerful weapon is the one left unfired. Let's just say, I said, my voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, that the villains in my stories are often inspired by real-life characters, people who tried to control me, to manipulate me, to steal my voice, my dreams, my very identity as a writer. The interviewer's eyes gleamed with a predatory excitement that was both flattering and disturbing. And how did you overcome these villains? She asked, her voice a barely contained eagerness for the juicy details. I escaped, I said simply, my smile widening, the triumph in my eyes a testament to the power of resilience, the strength of a spirit that refused to be broken. I walked away from the toxicity, the negativity, the limitations that had been imposed on me. I reinvented myself, found my own voice, and built a world where my creativity could flourish, where my dreams could take flight. That's incredibly inspiring, the interviewer gushed, her tone a mix of admiration and a hint of envy that I savored like a fine wine. What message would you give to aspiring writers, to those who are struggling to find their voice, to overcome their own personal challenges? Never give up, I said, my voice firm, my gaze unwavering. Never let anyone silence your voice, steal your dreams, or tell you that your stories don't matter. The world needs your words, your vision, your unique perspective. Embrace your struggles, learn from your mistakes, and keep writing, keep creating, keep fighting for the right to tell your story, your way. The interview concluded, the cameras switching off, the lights dimming, the applause echoing through the studio. I rose from my seat, a sense of satisfaction settling over me, a quiet triumph that transcended the accolades, the fame, the fortune. I had used their platform, their audience, their insatiable hunger for a good story, to tell my own story, a story of betrayal, resilience, and the ultimate victory of a woman who had refused to be silenced. And somewhere in a quiet suburban home, two people who had once dismissed my passion as nonsense were probably watching, their faces a mask of regret, the echoes of their betrayal a haunting melody in the symphony of my success.